Hello! Before we get started, I want to invite you to pause this workshop and get comfortable. Stretch, get a drink, or do anything else that makes this a more comfortable environment for you to learn. My name is London Reynolds, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm recording from my library in Utah. I also have my small dog in my lap, so you may see Russie appear from time to time. I graduated cum laude with a degree in English and a minor in Latin from St. Louis University in Missouri. Currently, I'm a pre-social work major taking classes at the University of Utah to finish some prerequisites so that I can apply to medical school. I helped to plan and implement the U's 2021 Virtual Pre-Med and Pre-Physician Assistant Conference on Inclusivity in Healthcare, and I'm part of a research team that studies environmental exposure disparities and subsequent health outcomes. I'm also helping with efforts to reboot the U's chapter of Latinos in Action, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to speak with you today. Today, we'll be talking about stereotype threat. First, we'll define what stereotype threat is. Second, we'll identify some examples of stereotype threat. Third, we'll discuss some ways to self-advocate and overcome stereotype threat. So let's get started. First, what is stereotype threat? I didn't encounter this term until I met my mentor at the University of Utah, Dr. Marina Capella. Dr. Capella is a brilliant Latina physician who is living in Salt Lake and has been kind enough to share her wisdom through mentoring, keynote speeches, and online resources. Stereotype threat happens when we feel like we're at risk of conforming to negative stereotypes about a group or a community that we're part of. In academics, this can mean that we want to do well, but because a group that we identify with has a stereotype of not performing well in a certain area, we may start to lose confidence in that area. We may not ask questions because we don't want people to think of us as part of that stereotype. We may avoid or start to lose interest in that subject altogether. Let me clarify something. Wanting to succeed is good. Everyone watching this has enormous potential to create positive change in the world. But pressuring yourself to succeed because of some aspect of your identity isn't fair to yourself. Everyone is going to need help at some point. You deserve help when you need it. You deserve to ask questions, and you deserve access to resources. So next, let's identify some examples of stereotype threat. I want to note that this is not an exhaustive list. There are lots of different identities and stereotypes that can lead to stereotype threat, and one person can have multiple intersecting identities that put pressure on them. And because no community is a monolith, I can only speak to my own lived experiences. So here are 3 examples of stereotype threat from my life and the ways that they've impacted me. The first example has to do with gender. In 4th grade, my mom, who was a teacher, first told me that girls don't tend to perform as well as boys in math. I'd always done well in math classes, but suddenly I was afraid that everyone would think that I was bad at math because I was a girl. So I stopped asking my teacher when I needed help in class. I would be so anxious that I would get physically sick before math tests, and I dreaded math classes all the way through high school. Now I'm taking math classes in college, and I'm doing just fine because I know how to ask when I need help. The second example is about disability status. I live with chronic illnesses that cause disability. And when I was earning my bachelor's degree, I didn't want anyone to know that I was sick because of ableist ideas that I had internalized. So instead, I was missing classes and assignments all the time without letting my teachers know what was going on. Luckily, I had a teacher who cared enough to reach out and connect me with the school's disability office so that I could get the accommodations that I needed to graduate on time. My third example is about ethnicity. I'm a Latina pre-med student. In 2019, 47.9% of medical school graduates were women. But of all the practicing physicians in the US, only 2% are Latinas. I often feel a lot of pressure to do well because I'm part of an underrepresented group. I have to remind myself that it's not fair to ask myself to stand in for an entire community. I only represent me, and I need help, just like any other pre-med student. Now it's time to talk about self-advocacy. What are some actions that we can take to overcome stereotype threat? The theme of this year's conference is Be the Change. Everyone who is watching this is someone who wants to see change in the world. We won't see the kind of change that we want if our own actions support systems of oppression by marginalizing ourselves and our needs. So here are 3 things that you can do to advocate for yourself in situations where you may experience stereotype threat. Number 1, be proactive. Let people know what your needs are. Be upfront about it. Ask questions as soon as you have them instead of waiting until you've started to fall behind in classes. Don't let yourself struggle in silence. Number 2, approach problems from a different perspective. What are your strengths? Your identity is not an obstacle. It's an asset. You bring the benefit of your unique lived experiences to every situation that you encounter, and you deserve to exist as your authentic self. Number 3, find allies. It can be hard to advocate for ourselves. It takes practice. Sometimes we don't know what to ask for because we don't know what resources are available to us. Allies like the teacher who connected me with my school's disability services, or a student success advocate, or a counselor can help you understand your options and connect you with the resources that you need. Before we end this workshop, I want to challenge you to identify a situation in your life where you may not be accessing all the resources available to you. Write down a brief description of that situation. Then, list at least 3 specific steps that you can take to advocate for yourself in this situation. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has been helpful for you and that you'll take away some concrete ideas for advocating for yourself as you create change in your life and in the world around you.